What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to go over the reviews for The Outer Worlds 2. They dropped earlier today. Obviously, the game comes out and it's early access tomorrow, or let's just say October 24th, I guess, depending on when you're watching this video. And then, of course, it opens up to everybody next week, right? So you get a couple days early with that early access. So reviews are out, and these are actually some pretty interesting ones. I think it's, I do these quite often, and sometimes they kind of feel a little samey to me, so I like it when something kind of spices it up. So number one, what I actually found very interesting is the highs of the scores themselves did not go above a 95 or a 9.5. One outlet gave it a 9.5, and beyond that, it only got one. The rest of them are 9s and below. Now, I find that interesting is, like, normally there could be a game that gets like a 7 out of 10, right, or 70, say, average. It might have one or two perfect scores. There might be somebody out there that wants to throw out that 10 out of 10 score, right? But then it'll get brought down, from, say, 5s or 6s and stuff. This one is so much like everybody's pretty consistent. You have a couple 7s, you got 7.5s, but the amount of 8s are legendary. It is the most, obviously it's a number that's used quite often with reviewing this game. And the overall score, I believe, is sitting at an 84. 84 with the Xbox version. It's got the most scores, so that's normally the one that I go based off of when I talk about it. On Metacritic, PC, there were 30 reviews. It's at an 81, so an okay amount lower. And then PS5, 21 scores, also an 81. So the Xbox One, 44. It had the most sites, so it had the better, I would say, average, 84 out of 100. And like I said, there's actually a very, very good amount of 9s and then just a very, very good amount of 8s. I would say those are the two most common. But the lowest, I think there's 2 7s. That's it. 2 7s, 2 7.5s. The rest are 8s. So, I mean, and I really, for the most part, and you can go back and look at all the other games that I've done these kind of recap reviews for, normally there's actually a much wider spread. Like, you have a person that I think wants to make a name for themselves and give a game like a 4 or a 5, and then you have the people that just give it a 10, even though maybe it's not a 10, they give it a 10 anyway, and that kind of makes that range so much bigger. But this game is just like all 8s. It's like a really solid or far above average is a good game, maybe a great game, but not an amazing game. All these words that I'm throwing at you. But okay, in terms of also what people are saying, it seems like people are pretty in line. I only saw a couple contradictions. I saw one person talking about that, like, the companions felt very weak, and then I saw another one that was kind of in the 9 range, I think, that talked about how the companions were a strength. So it's like, all right, that's a wash. You don't really know. Then that's personal preference, honestly. Right there is what you're seeing. But no, honestly, I think from so many of these, the strengths are kind of what you think they're going to be. The weaknesses are also what you think they're going to be. I've also, outside of just reading these reviews, a lot of influencers, like the YouTubers and stuff, got to play it too. I've seen a lot of, like, this is the Fallout New Vegas of Outer Worlds, and, like, or at least like this. If you liked New Vegas, you would like something like this. Whether that's tone, whether that's kind of the feel. I think like, the main praise for this game is the reaction to your choices. And maybe that's how, like, New Vegas kind of gets brought into the equation. And let me tell you, that's something that interests me very, very much, because I've struggled twice now to love The Outer Worlds. And I can't say I do love The Outer Worlds, but I really tried 2 different times in my life. But one thing that stands out, just you could tell immediately, when you play it, it's got that depth. And your decisions immediately, some of the earliest quests in the original game, there's like some serious consequences to what you're choosing. And you can get out of situations multiple ways. You can get your way through situations multiple ways. The complexity in that way, I think, is an immediate strength of The Outer Worlds, even from somebody who, again, kind of struggled to really like the game. So that really has interested me for this game, because I think a lot of the things that kind of held back the first game were also maybe addressed here, we'll talk about in a second. But the conversations, the writing, the characters, the themes, a lot of that stuff people are praising. And specifically how one choice will alter something and that will alter something else, and that kind of ripple effect. That gets me really pumped, because I do really love it when games give us that. Again, and I think The Outer Worlds kind of showed, okay, we're actually really good at it already, and this game seems to be, even better at it. So the big thing beyond that was the combat. The combat I think was, still, at least to me, not fun at all in the first game. I actually, when I was replaying it just a couple of weeks ago, maybe it was like a month or so ago at this point, I put so many skill points into just talkative, categories. So anything that had to do with lying or intellect or whatever, bluffing, anything, persuading, I guess is the correct definition. Anything that had to do with talking yourself out of a situation, I did that so I didn't have to fight, because I just found the fighting to be just point blank not good, at least in my own opinion. What we've seen so far, getting closer and closer to this game, the combat has kind of impressed me. Like, it did look really good, or at least it looked, maybe not really good, maybe at least, okay, a massive step up from the first game. So that was something I was kind of waiting to see, and I think from really everybody that I saw, it's kind of a consensus, thought, where it's like the combat is much better. Even if it's not amazing, it's much better. That's kind of what I've seen. I don't really think I saw almost anybody. In fact, no, let me look at it again. No, I don't think anybody said, like, this is a masterful, fighting system, gunplay kind of thing. But they talked about, like, how the guns feel and how they all feel different, and that there's environmental effects now, and just, it feels so much better to actually get into fights. And that was something, I mean, even just what I said right there, a big issue with the first game to me was the samey kind of vibes to it, and just eventually I did not want to get into fights. So I did everything possible to not fight people, but to outthink them or to lie to them or persuade them. Anything I could do and put my skill points towards that did not involve a gun was what I, leaned towards, just because I didn't like it. So, for them to elevate that, even if it's not like a masterpiece, like a 10 out of 10, even just hearing it's a, a big step up makes me happy. Honestly, because I didn't really think, like, I've been playing a lot of different games. A lot of games have been coming out. I remember this game was coming out. I didn't forget about it, but I didn't really put a lot of thought into, okay, what will the scores be? I think an 84, by the way, I kind of just glossed over that. 84 is pretty freaking good, like right in the middle of the 80s. It's actually, I think, 2 or 3.2 or 0.3 higher than Ninja Gaiden. I think Ninja Gaiden 4 got like an 82. Totally different games, but a mid 80 is pretty darn good. So I'm happy for it. That's great, and I hope people enjoy it. And I'm gonna try to play it. My Game Pass is going to expire in the middle of November, and I'm not gonna renew it for the $30. I'm gonna kind of pick month by month. So I either play this game now or I buy it, I suppose. Or maybe I can get it through Game Pass some other month down the line when I renew it. So I hope to play it. And honestly, after seeing this stuff, like, I feel pretty okay about it. I actually think I feel better about it than I've ever felt before. The thing is, just Outer Worlds 1 was just such an interesting. I did a whole retrospective on it if you want to watch from Podcast Now Back to the Past, my third channel, and I think we went into a lot of depth, my friend and I just could not get super into it. I kind of respect what it's good at, but I could never really embrace it. I guess that's the final thing. Maybe we can end it with that. So one, I kind of find this funny, to be honest with you. I saw more than one, okay, probably like 3 or 4, to be honest. I saw many people say, if you liked the whole classic, like, it doesn't reinvent the wheel. So if you liked the first game, you're going to like this game because it makes those improvements, But if you didn't like if you just couldn't jive with it, what it was trying to do, the second game is not revolutionizing anything. And, depending on which outlet you read that from, some kind of docket, I feel like a little bit more than others, from that point alone. And it's like, I don't know how to feel about that. And that's why I don't do scores like myself, because it's a sequel. Do you want it to reinvent the wheel? I mean, yeah, you think about some of the biggest jumps of sequels of all time. It is quite the step up, but it really, it's not deviating. It's not making an entirely new IP or franchise. It's going to feel familiar. If you play Uncharted 2 and you play Uncharted 1, yeah, 2 is miles better because they just push everything to an 11, 11 out of 10. But is it Uncharted? Is it actually Uncharted 2 from Uncharted 1? Yeah. So if you didn't like Uncharted 1, maybe you'll like Uncharted 2, but I don't know. Like, I feel like you probably also wouldn't. So I don't know. That's kind of an age-old argument where people kind of get mad at that, where it's like, well, if you didn't like the first game, you're not going to like the second game. Well, were you expecting to? Like, did you think they were going to change the entire game? Yes, they can absolutely make improvements, but again, it's kind of that classic talk. If you could take it and you could tolerate it, in the first game, game, they've increased it. They've elevated it, so maybe you'll like it even more now. But if you hated it, if you hated the first game, the second game is a better version of the first game, so you might still not like it, right? So that kind of feels obvious to me, at least. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.